Hey, my name's James and welcome to The Distant Vale. This week we are looking at the Imperial Service Action Pack, just hide behind that, by Corvus Belli. Now apologies, my voice is a little bit raspy, got a little bit of a cold, so bear with me as we go through. As I say, this week we're going to go through the Imperial Service Action Pack that was released in April, and it contains 10 miniatures on 9 bases. After we've gone through and had a look at the models within the box, I'm going to briefly show you, using the Ninja model, how to paint the orangey yellow armour panels. So here we have the Imperial Service Action Pack. So as I was mentioning beforehand, there's 10 metal miniatures within the set. Of these miniatures, you actually only end up with 9 bases because I think it's the Pheasant rank with Red Fury ends up on a single base, which is more like a 60mm, whereas the other minis are all going on 25mm bases. The one thing I did find with this is pretty much all the minis are actually split up into individual bags, which is great, makes a lot of sense, very little flashing. As always with Corvus Belli minis, they are super well put together, very little flashing, and most of the time you don't need to do much seam repair stuff with green stuff. However, the one thing I would say is there's no instructions in the set, so there are a few loose pieces within the box that you kind of need to guess a little bit of. You know, when you're putting a jigsaw together and you need to put a few of the pieces down to realise what the other ones are, yeah, kind of had that experience with this box set. However, as we go through, we've got 3 Celestial Guards, 1 Imperial Agent Crane rank with machine gun, a Pheasant rank with Red Fury, and a Wooming with machine gun, a Bayara with a light shotgun and close combat weapons, so that's this model here at the moment, and then the Koga Ninja and the Jinyao drop unit with the boarding shotgun. These models take really easily in terms of primer. Normally with metal models you're supposed to wash them, but I thought I'd just give it a go and prime them straight off and see whether or not the primer's stuck. Slightly risky with a $200 box of miniatures, but you know, why not? You only live once. So I went through, primed all these, primed them with a rattle can primer, and it came off really well and had no issues with it. So that boarding unit's super cool, but this is like the pièce de résistance of the set. That dragon, when you paint the armour panels, is honestly absolutely gorgeous. We've got some photos over on Instagram, but it's such a cool model to paint. Now that we've got these, we're going to move on to painting the Koga Ninja. Going to start off, most of the paints I use here are Vallejo, but the one thing, I love the flesh tones from Tooth and Coats, so we're going to start with Dwarven Skin and just paint. But I just wanted to put in the very start, before I started painting the armour panels, I've gone through initially and done the skin, and then gone through and base coated all of the fabric, metal and black areas with a Vallejo German grey, which is a slightly blue-black, before we move on to the armour panels now, just because when you do the armour panels you're not going to want to paint around them afterwards. So the first colour we're going to use with the armour panels is Vallejo Cavalry Brown. Not what you're expecting when you're going to paint an orange, but when you paint through with this Cavalry Brown, you're just looking for a nice thick base coat. Say it's a thick base coat, but I'm one thick coat rather than 2 thin coats with base coats. So go through with the Cavalry Brown and make sure it's on the shin guards, the arms, the hand guards, and part of the bow as well. And there's a little bit of chest armour as well that needs to be orange. We're starting off with this deep, like reddy brown, and then we're going to build up. The first colour we're going to build up with is Cork Brown. With the Cork Brown, mix in a small amount of the Cavalry Brown and then start highlighting up. When you're highlighting up, it's going to be with 80–90% coverage. So you only want to leave the Cavalry Brown in the recesses. You don't really want to leave too much of it around because it's quite a strong colour, but what it is going to do is it's going to tint the colours that you actually apply over the top, so these next layers. So as I was saying, use the orange brown and 80–90%. If you've enjoyed the video so far, I'd love it if you could like and subscribe or drop us a comment below. We're a growing channel and any support from you guys is greatly appreciated. And while I've got your attention, just like to say thank you to Corvus Belli for providing us these miniatures. Without the support of companies like Corvus Belli, we wouldn't be able to have the fun that we're doing on YouTube. So thank you all. Now that we've used that, we're going to use the Scrofulous Brown. Scrofulous Brown is quite an orangey yellow brown. Again, mix a small amount of the previous colour, so that orange brown in with it. This time when we're highlighting, we're going to go significantly less coverage. It's a thinner coat. It applies thinner anyway, just because of the nature of the game colour paint. But 60–70%, this time you need to think a little bit more about where the light's hitting. So if it is on a panel that is going to be in direct light, obviously apply it. But when you get the shin guards, you want to apply it to the top of the shin guards, but also the bases. Just thinking about a little bit of volumetric highlighting. And that's the same when you start coming to the arm guards. I'm not going to paint with a Scrofulous Brown underneath the arms where there is no light shining down. With the Scrofulous Brown, we're then going to highlight up with Ice Yellow, and this is where we're going to actually be applying the proper highlights. So looking at volumetric highlighting down the arm, so that straight down the middle as though it's a bar of light going down. And this is where you're then going to start edge highlighting with this Ice Yellow. So the areas where you're not going to get a huge amount of light, but you want an edge highlight on the top. And with this, progressively adding slightly more Ice Yellow until you're just very, very faintly edge highlighting. Contrast is key here to get this orange. Once you've done this though, we're actually going to go back and start glazing. So I've done this I've recorded this in a slightly different way because really I've glazed in between all of these. But you don't want too much of a jump. So to get rid of this jump, we're actually going to then glaze the previous colour in and just slowly work our way through smoothing out the jumps between the two tones. So using the Scrofulous Brown from the previous colour, just going to glaze the edges through and just try and bring it out as a smoother transition. And here you go, we've got the end product of the yellowy orange. Now if it's not orange enough for you, you can glaze completely over with more orangey colour or a reddy colour, and you can tint it, or you can tint it with an ink as well if you want to. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch the video, and if you've enjoyed what you've watched, maybe watch some of the other stuff on the channel, or if you've got any suggestions and things you'd like to see us do, drop us a comment or send us an email. Looking forward to seeing you next time, guys.